Welcome to the Candidates Forum for Berkeley Heights Mayor and Berkeley Heights Township Council. My name is Lenore Kahn, Vice President for Berkeley Heights. We are collecting questions for the mayoral portion of the forum at the present time. If you have a question, hold up the card and it will be collected. Michelle Bobrow from the Maplewood South Orange League is our moderator for this evening. She will explain the program.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to see you all here today. My name is Michelle Bobrow. I am from the League of Women Voters of Maplewood South Orange. So as we like to say, I don't have any skin in this game. I am your moderator tonight, and let me inform you about League of Women Voters. It is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Elections and voting are core concerns of the League. Leagues are committed to providing fact-based information about issues and the positions candidates take on those issues to help voters make their own decisions and participate in the electoral process. The League never supports or opposes candidates for office or political parties. Any use of the League name or footage from the debate in campaign materials, literature, or advertising of any kind, including internet, cable, or television, has not been authorized by the League of Women Voters. As a courtesy to the candidates, please turn off all your cell phones and electronic devices now, and please refrain from taking photographs during the debate. This program is going to be videoed and will be shown on GLTV 34 and FiOS 47 at a later time. We are here tonight to hear from the views of the two candidates running for mayor, and then in the second half, we will hear the four candidates running for 2 seats on the Berkeley Heights Township Council. The candidates are allowed 2 minutes for an opening statement, followed by audience written questions, which you have submitted graciously on cards. The candidates will have 1 minute each to respond and 30-second rebuttal if they feel it's necessary. And then we will end with a 2-minute closing statement, followed by last words from me and the League regarding this evening. So I urge you, first of all, to please hold your applause until the end of this presentation to allow the candidates the maximum time to share their views with you. The candidates vying for a position of mayor are Angie Devaney and Robert Woodruff. And they are each going to give us a 2-minute opening statement, starting with Ms. Devaney.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I also applaud the candidates tonight. Placing your name on a ballot and balancing family life, work life, and volunteer activities is not easy, I know. My name is Angie Devaney, and I'm a very proud mom of Abby, a 5th grader at Mountain Park, and Ryan, a junior at Governor Livingston. Like most of you, George and I moved to Berkeley Heights for the tree-lined streets and the wonderful school system. But I also wanted to live in the type of community that my children will one day come back and raise a family on their own. Just to share some of my professional background, I was the Open Space Trust Fund Administrator, where I helped to save 100 acres 7 years ahead of schedule. I also wrote the Kids Recreation Trust Grant and the Greening Streets grant programs for Union County. But my Berkeley Heights story actually started a bit before I became a resident. I was involved in the negotiations with Stanford Drive, now Snyder Avenue Park, and without the leadership of Mayor Cohen reaching out to the county and advocating for this project, this jewel of our community would not have happened. Instead, we would pass hundreds of condos and snarled traffic. It was the first expression of purple. After tough negotiations with the developer and forcing the developer to pay for the cleanup of the contamination, not the taxpayers, I was asked to become the Berkeley Heights Township Administrator. I created 2 shared services for IT and printing that analyzed the insurance policy, saving significant tax dollars. But in 2008, I elected to start my own business so I could participate more fully in my children's activities. Recently, I retired as the Mountain Park PTO president after serving 2 years, and I served on the PAL board for the last 5 years. Presently, I am the board secretary. Over the last decade, I have noticed decline in our services. I have a plan to do better. So Berkeley Heights remains the kind of community that all of our children will want to come back and raise their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Woodruff.
Good evening to all of you who have joined us. And good evening, Ms. Devaney. And thank you to the League of Women Voters. This election boils down to one simple question. Is Berkeley Heights in a better place now than 4 years ago? I say a resounding yes to that question. Under my leadership, we are now the 5th safest municipality in the state, have the 2nd lowest tax rate in Union County with budget under 2% property tax cap. Home values have soared. This is not by accident. It is a result of vision, hard work, and operating as a team for the people of Berkeley Heights. Under my leadership, we're constructing a brand new township facility for police, library administration, community recreation, and seniors. Under my leadership, we have kept the YMCA in town and their brand new 30,000 square foot building and saved our community pool in the process. We've upgraded parks, fields, and playgrounds at Veterans Park, Memorial Field, Upper Columbia, and more. Under my leadership, for the first time, the township has a 5-year strategic capital plan, including a long-term repaving schedule, where substantial dollars are allocated on a yearly basis. We operate through a consortium to save costs. Under my leadership, we continue to protect our small town feel. Trenton mandates sought to force hundreds of new affordable housing units on this township. Our team fought it and won a 75% reduction. The judiciary refers to our settlement as a model to which others are being held. We found redevelopment solutions for major abandoned properties, controlled density, required strict adherence to design standards, instituted new sidewalks, streetlights, signage, and flower baskets, all making our downtown even better. We now have to make sure these developers adhere to the agreements. Our town has the skill set necessary to execute what lies ahead. Under my leadership, we have collaborated with local businesses, producing the Street Fair, Winter Walk, Restaurant Week, Art in the Park, and Beauty and Wellness Week. These owners see a revitalized downtown and have committed to making Berkeley Heights a better place. We seek cost savings through shared services with Madison, Long Hill, Milburn Rollway, our own Board of Education, and the County of Union. Our record is extensive, and we have proven ourselves. I look forward to tonight's discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. And you get the next question to answer first. Given the development planned in town, what would you do as mayor to minimize impact on the residents, including traffic, infrastructure, schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in 1 minute?
Is that to me? Is that to me?
Mr. Woodruff.
Okay, thank you.
We're alternating.
Okay. Well, our entire approach to the affordable housing and redevelopment already has a plan in place. Each of the different projects that we have and those that we're developing with have all signed developer agreements. 2 or 3 of those particular agreements are going to have parking inside the structure. That addresses one major problem. Each one of them have to conduct their own traffic study. In fact, the Locust Avenue project will be coming with a traffic light at the corner of Snyder and Locust. I'm sure it's welcomed by everybody sitting in this room. The 55 and older project will not open until that traffic light is up. The affordable housing has presented issues. There's no doubt about it. But as I said, they wanted 800 and some units, and we knock it down to 200. The courts don't want to hear that we have problems if we have too many people. That's not their problem. They see it as our problem. The school situation has been addressed. Right? Doug Reinstein, president of the Board of Education, stood at a town meeting and indicated they had done their own study, and in fact, it will not impact the schools. The schools are now down approximately 243 students from 2009. So that's been addressed. Thank you.
Ms. Devaney.
Thank you. One of the items that we've proposed is a community impact fee. It's something that I've negotiated professionally at another luxury residential development that's been very effective. It does exactly what it says. It helps to mitigate the impact on the community. Say, for example, there's additional public safety needs. Maybe that year there's additional fire equipment that's needed. You can use that fund for those types of items. Additionally, I think we need a citizens review committee. I think we need to bring together senior citizens, Republicans, Democrats, business owners. Look at the view from 5,000 feet up and figure out what we need in terms of traffic and business and how the developments will impact our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Of course.
Oh, thank you very much.
30 seconds.
Yes, what Mr. Vanny's talking about is essentially called a community benefit payment. The redevelopment law has three opportunities in which money is taken from developers. One is the community payment. One is in kind, meaning they can build a particular garage and what have you. And the third is a pilot. We have chosen a pilot, but in fact, some of our projects are mix, are blends. For example, Kings not only is paying us a pilot, they must take care of all of the Sherman Avenue property going down to Plainfield. So there's a mix, okay? It is our opinion, professional opinion, as those of our professional workers, that in fact, the plan that we do have in place, the pilot, is the best for Berkeley Heights. It serves 30 to 35 years. It gives us long-term security. It gives us liens on the property themselves, which you do not get if you do not do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, the development that I was referring to, we did both. We did a pilot and a community impact fee. Thank you.
How would you make the new municipal building green energy efficient site? Starting with Ms. Devaney.
I believe there's been some discussion about this, and one of the ideas that I heard bantered about was solar panels. I think that's been since dismissed, but I would love to try to revisit solar panels since the municipal complex has not broken ground at this point.
And Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you. The solar panel issue has been looked at carefully. The biggest problem is cost, okay? And in fact, we've gone to other towns that have utilized the solar, and at this point in time, it is excessive, and it's something, although I think everyone in the room would like to do it, it is cost prohibitive at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. I lost my question. Here we are. There has been much discussion regarding transparency. Could you please define your definition, give your definition of transparency in politics, and how would you try to expand it? Mr. Woodruff.
Well, transparency really addresses the communication or the ability to communicate with those in town. We have instituted, obviously, we have a website. We live stream all of our particular meetings. We do the same with the planning board. We have websites and so on and so forth. I think there's a preliminary issue here, and that has to do with actually what is going on in our own campaign here, transparency. Ms. Devaney, I think in the hope of transparency, she is a developer. I have no problem with that. Everyone has to have a job, and she's obviously very good at it. And it's important here, from a transparency standpoint, that it be understood that she does business with the County of Union, and she does business with various entities with the County of Union, and she's entitled to do that. However, this township spends $19 million a year going to the county, 25 cents out of every $1 in tax. So I think it's important that the people of this town, if Ms. Devaney seeks to be mayor of the people of this town, advises them exactly what the relationship is with respect to those that she represents on behalf of the county. There's nothing wrong with lobbyists. Thank you.
Mr. Devaney.
I am not a developer. My business does not have any contracts with the County of Union, and I have, as you know, stated in an essay that if there are any issues with conflicts, because I don't do business with the Township of Berkeley Heights either, it would be illegal for a governing body member to benefit from that. Any of my clients will be disclosed to the township attorney, and it's something that I hope that every governing body person has and will do in the future.
I would just ask one question. Is Ms. Devaney indicating that she represents no entities that do business with the county, whether they be architects or anyone else? Is that the representation?
I have been clear about my business, but I'm going to get back to the issue that the moderator has asked us. I believe transparency is not just expecting people to come to the government, but bringing the government to the people. Another issue that we have proposed is doing Facebook Live and e-newsletters. I think that it's important, and coffees and going out into the public. I think it's important to take government to the people, not just expecting the people to come to the government.
Totally different area. What specific actions would you take to help minorities in our community feel more accepted in an integral part of our town? Where are we starting? We're starting with Ms. Devaney.
One of the committees that I think has done a fantastic job is the Diversity Committee. I would like to, as mayor, help facilitate their role in the town, see much more cultural events. The other thing that I think would be important as mayor is to ensure that our boards and our committees are reflective of our growing diverse community.
Yes.
Thank you. We've had a very, very unfair incident, or unfortunate incident that occurred recently in this county as well as this town. With respect to flyers, hate-filled flyers, really, that were going around. I had the opportunity to stop while I was walking the other day and spoke to a particular resident who was sitting out there in the 5th row. And she indicated, and I believe she's from India, and she indicated that how this town is changing, and she had a concern, okay, basically because of that flyer. And I was there with about 5 or 6 people, and we spent about 45 minutes just kind of talking about how we can address it. And I think we all came to the conclusion that it's just about talking to each other. And I came to the conclusion it goes back to what your parents taught you when you were a little kid, and that is you treat people the way you wish to be treated yourself. And we had that discussion, and I think that's really at the heart of all this, just people talking to each other and just respecting one another. It really is. That's what it's about. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Change is often an empty political campaign buzzword. Name the most important things you feel that need change and why. Where are we? Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you. Well, if you're going to discuss change, that assumes you're not happy with what the town is. And I think this town has made incredible strides in the last 5 to 10 years. Whether you look downtown, whether you look at the affordable housing circumstance, whether you look at the YMCA and the fact that they are remaining in town, but for some discussions with members of the council and myself would be going elsewhere. The change is really what's going on, okay? You walk around this town and you see the change. Now the question is, we got to manage it. The question is, we've got to be on top of it. And that change is going to require contact with no less than 4 or 5 separate developers, all of whom have an idea that once you do a development plan, well, you can still do what you want anywhere after that. So we're going to have to obviously pay attention to that. But change is occurring all the time in this town, and that's a good thing. And what it has to do is be managed, and what it has to be managed by individuals who can execute that management.
Thank you. Ms. Devaney?
Thank you. When I think about change, I think about the missed opportunities that could have improved our community. Certainly the last 4 years missing 2 major state DOT grants is unacceptable. They average about $200,000 per grant for a minimum of $400,000. Imagine how many roads we could have paved with that money. And when I think about change, I think about the recreation grants that we've missed out on. And when I look at New Providence and Mountainside and see that they have received $300,000 to $400,000 more than us, we can do better. We're doing great things, but we can do better. I also believe that change is about advocacy, whether it's going to Elizabeth and advocating for county money or going to Trenton and advocating for the state. That's what I think change is about.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Devaney is correct. We missed 2 grants, one with Mr. Bruno at the helm and one with myself, and that's our responsibility. The individual that was involved with that is no longer working for the township. I would indicate this, however, and I know Mr. Devaney just made reference to the Berkeley Heights recreation situation, and it somewhat disturbed me when I heard about that reference because these people are volunteers. So what we did is I went and found out what the real numbers were, and I don't know where Mr. Devaney got her numbers, perhaps he got them from the county, but in fact Berkeley Heights has received $2.58 million over the last 7 years, triple to what New Providence and Mountainside has received during those years. Mr. Devaney indicated that apparently our volunteer recreation group missed trust grants in 2011 and 2013. That's not true. And in fact, they were both published. There is a picture of Joe Bruno receiving a check. So those, in fact, did occur, and I appreciate if Ms. Devaney did her fact-checking through the county, she may have gotten wrong information. That happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would encourage everyone to visit our website, changewecanagreeon.com. The actual physical documents are posted there. Thank you.
How can the town do a better job in obtaining grants, and what is your expertise in this area, Ms. Devaney?
Well, as I just noted, the 2 DOT grants are disheartening that we've missed them. Also, in terms of expertise, I did mention at the opening remarks that I was actually the author of 2 of those county recreation grant programs. So I feel like I know a little bit about them. Also helped to write in 2014 in conjunction with the REC and the PAL, a wonderful grant for Upper Columbia for the softball field there. So I've always, in terms of government, have been very judicious and looking for grant money and making sure that it's applied for.
Thank you. Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you. We've been applying for grants on roads, recycling, sidewalks, paths, parks, sports fields, senior citizen transportation. We recently received a $300,000 federal grant from the federal government. We've received, or we anticipate receiving by the end of 2018, $1.2 million in grants with respect to the roads. I would also indicate that there's an extremely important grant pending right now, or potential grant, pending with the Library Reconstruction Act. That's a serious issue right now. We are obviously putting up a library. The current law, which is being reviewed now by bond counsel, is not retroactive, means that when it goes into play, if you've already started, you will not receive any money. Both Council President Kingsley and I are dealing with local, I should say, with our legislative aides, including Mr. Bramnick's office and Senator Kip Bateman's office. We are trying to get retroactivity put into this bill. It's a substantial bill. There's $125 million at stake. We have a perfect candidate in our building. So it's not so much what's going to happen in 6 months. We've got to do it now. And Ms. Kingsley and I are doing what we can to make sure we save that.
Thank you.
The mayor and I agree. I too would advocate for the Library Construction Bond Act. It's something that I've been talking about at coffees, as many of these people out there know, probably for the last 6 months. And I too have been talking to those in the legislature to ensure that Berkeley Heights is accounted for when those dollars are allocated, and the application comes out in 2019.
Thank you.
Yes, just one more response. They claim that this particular act is modeled after the Educational Facilities Construction and Financing Act. And if that's the case, well, that particular act has retroactivity in it. So what we're trying to do, if you're going to model after the prior act that you claim to model after, then you ought to include retroactivity. So, and if it does, then we're in very, very good shape, because as I said, I think we fit all the components and the elements of what's required. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of having more efficiency, what are your thoughts on combining municipalities to save on our personal taxes, Mr. Woodruff?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
What are your thoughts on combining municipalities to save on taxes?
Well, as everyone in this room knows by now, we get 17 cents out of every one of your tax dollars. The county gets 25, the library gets 1, and the school board gets the remaining monies. We have figured out by the time that most of the monies that we must pay to all set costs and so on and so forth, we have about 2 or 3% of discretionary income. So we don't have a lot to go around. I would indicate that the operational costs this year, 2018, are about $7,000 less than they were in 2017. So we're doing the best thing we can to stretch our dollar. Right? I often say that if you went up to somebody paying $10,000 in taxes and said, would you appreciate all the services you get in this town for $1,700? They say, yeah, absolutely I would. I said, well, that's what you're paying. So I think the people in this town recognize that what they do pay in taxes, although no one wants to pay as much, it's fair. We have a school system that is among the best in the state. All right, we have, as we indicated, one of the safest towns in the state. And these are costs. Costs are involved in this. And I think most of us sitting in this room realize that we pay fair taxes. As they say, taxes are the price you pay to live in a civilized society.
Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Vanny?
Was the question combining municipalities?
Yes. With the aim to save taxes.
Correct. So I'm not sure how realistic it is with larger municipalities to combine services. I know that Senator Gopal is trying to do that in Monmouth County with smaller municipalities. I think what we can do is we can look at more shared services, not just with the county, but maybe with the Board of Education and surrounding municipalities. I think that we can't live in silos. I think we have to look at our PALs, our rec commissions, our other recreational organizations, and see if we can pull together money to try to leverage as much grant dollars as we possibly can as well. Thank you.
I think this is an issue that Ms. Devaney and I probably agree on, and most of us out here. There was an attempt in the beginning of the Christie administration to put together a toolkit to encourage towns to get together, so to speak. I think we all realize that there are major impediments to that, not the least of which is the economics of it and the deployment circumstances of it. All right? I know towns have tried. Some have been able to do it. I think it's difficult. I think the best thing to do is, as indicated, work with our Board of Education, work with other towns as we have to try and defray costs or spread costs around. Thank you.
Yes?
Thank you. No further rebuttal.
Okay. If you could accomplish only one thing for the township, what would it be? Where are we? Mr. Vanny?
I think it would be improved management. Again, the grant opportunities missed, some of the approaches that we've taken to how we operate our day-to-day government, I think can certainly be improved. That coupled with making sure that we highlight our volunteers and utilize their skill set as best as possible, I think it would be a tremendous achievement.
Speaking in real time, it's bringing this entire affordable housing redevelopment situation to a productive end for this town. It has been a difficult task to get here. Executing it will be equally difficult, but to me that is the most important thing that has to be done in this township, and arguably the most important thing that's been done in the last 50 years. Thank you.
I think as well, I want to just add one additional item, and that's probably the management of the municipal complex. At this point, we do have a guaranteed maximum price. If that price isn't met, then there is a split between the developer and the township, so I think it's critically important to make sure that project is managed and managed properly.
I would agree with that, and I want to thank Michael Tequila, who you'll hear in a little while, who is managing all these projects for us. He has a particular skill set which no one else does, and he has been the individual. If there is cost savings, the town gets 70 cents on the dollar, and the developer gets 30 cents on the dollar. So there is a check and balance on each end of it. Thank you.
Thank you. A major role of mayor is labor relations and should be R. Labor relations and contract negotiations. Whoever wrote this will have an English lesson later. Please discuss your experience in labor relations and contract negotiations. Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you. I'm an attorney by trade, and I apologize for that. But I have been involved in labor law and employment law for the better part of 30 years, so I've been on both sides of the fence there. I have been involved in the contract negotiations with the police in our town. And we just finished our third contract negotiation. The difficult thing that you do in this setting is you want to be fair to your employees, you want to be fair to your police department, but you're also the representative of 13,500 people. So when I go into that meeting with the police, you're my clients. Okay, so that has to be balanced. It's got to be fair because we deal with our police officers all the time. Okay, they live among us. They are friends, and you want to avoid that. Fortunately, up until this past January 1, there was a 2% arbitration cap on all public sector employees. That has sunsetted, and I do not think the current governor, given his political affiliations, will necessarily sign that. So the next situation where we're talking about a contract will be an entirely different ballgame.
Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Benny?
Yes, as township administrator, I did negotiate the DPW contract, the superior officers, and I believe the PBA contract. It's been a while, so my recall maybe isn't as good as it normally is. But I agree with Mr. Woodruff. Certainly you need to be fair to the people that work in this town. They do a great job, all the while making sure that you're watching the bottom line and the taxpayers' dollars. It is something that I think that I'm proud of, that we did a good job. And of course, you know, the governing body that I worked with as well was supportive in those efforts and making sure that we certainly did the right thing by our taxpayers and for our employees.
I think we also should remember that most of the other contracts flow off the PBA. We're currently doing the white-collar workers. And once you establish the police contract, which is the elephant in the room, so to speak, everything else comes off of that. So we also at DPW and the wastewater treatment plant. But it all starts with the police, and you work off of that. Thank you.
Berkeley Heights and New Jersey as a whole are expensive places to live, especially the property taxes we all pay. Do you believe we get good value for our taxes? I'm assuming that answer is, but of course. And how can we do better in the future? Mr. Vanni.
Oh.
You know, I have met quite a number of people over the last several months, and there's one mother, family, young family in particular, who shared with me her personal situation, and her comment was that she didn't know if she could afford to live in this town anymore and afford those taxes. I think it is our duty as mayor and governing body members that we avail ourselves of every funding opportunity that we possibly can, every shared service that we possibly can, bringing every nonprofit group together that we possibly can to bring in grant dollars and shared services so we can make this town as affordable as possible and not lose any of the quality of life as well.
Thank you. Mr. Woodruff.
Yes, thank you. Certainly seeking sources of income outside the taxing of individuals is preferred, and much of what Mr. Vanni just said is going on now, and I don't disagree with it. You know, it always seems to fall on the municipality when you have 17% of the tax dollars, okay? So it's extremely difficult. It's something that we're constantly trying to do. This is an expensive area to live in. It's an expensive area to live in because the schools are great. It's an expensive area to live in because someone wants to live near New York City. It's an expensive area to live with because there's the transit situation, an ability, well, maybe not right now, but in any event, an ability to get around and so on and so forth. This is not a cheap place to live. I agree that there are people that, in fact, we deal with the seniors all the time with this. And trying to make it a little easier for these people to get by. It's not easy. Anything we can do to find additional income beyond taxing people is certainly preferable. Thank you.
Thank you. If you had unlimited funds, what would you aim for to benefit the town? Mr. Woodruff.
Well, I'd pay off the debt, number one. I'd make sure we had sufficient surplus to move forward, whatever our professionals thought was appropriate. I would then obviously look around and determine what the school system needs. I go and determine what the downtown needs and so on and so forth. It's kind of a fantasy question, so I'm sitting here trying to fantasize a bit. Fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have that kind of an opportunity, so beyond that, that's about all I can say. Thank you.
Mr. Vanni?
Probably the first thing comes to mind as a softball, baseball mom. I think that we would try to improve all of our recreational opportunities for everyone in town, whether you're a child playing baseball or soccer or lacrosse, or a senior citizen who wanted a walking path, or something I'd love to see is a dog park in this town. So I think the first thing, along with all the more practical things like paying off the debt, is making sure that we have ample recreational opportunities for everyone.
Thank you. It's time for closing now. So we're going to go in reverse order. You have 2 minutes to address anything you'd like about why we should be voting for you, starting with Mr. Woodruff.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, as well as all of you who have taken the time to come and listen to Mr. Vanni and I. It is clear that we're in a better place today in this town than we were 4 years ago under my leadership, and I commit to leading us to an even better future 4 years from now. This is a pivotal election for Berkeley Heights. We strive to run an administration where there is power with our residents, not power over our residents. I am proud to be your mayor. I'm proud of my 9 years of service to the taxpayers. I do not now seek, nor have I ever sought, higher office. For me, my commitment remains a simple one, to work together to continue to make Berkeley Heights a great place to live. I know what it means to listen to the people and answer to the people. Now, this may indeed be the most active period of significant events in our township's history. This is not the time to experiment with those who seek change, particularly when they do not realize that it is already taking place and continues to do so. Look around. We are the change. Under my leadership, positive changes have and will continue to occur. We have tremendous positive momentum. We have solid, comprehensive plans in place to continue our progress. I'm a longtime resident and care deeply about the township and preserving all that makes Berkeley Heights a great place to live. I think back to the over 30 years I've lived in Berkeley Heights, and while I'm extremely proud of our team's accomplishments, there is one thing of which I'm equally proud. During my involvement with the PAL, which might have lasted about 10 years, I coached at least 3 sports for probably 7 or 8 years, a lot of great young men. And those kids are now coming home. They're coming back. And I see them on the street and what have you, and it tells us what a great town we have, that these kids come back. And I stopped one time, and we got talking. And we're talking about, what went on 25 years ago or 20 years ago playing ball. And I said, you're back here now. I said, it's your turn. You have to step up. You have to do what people like I and your dad and so on and so forth did. And he looked at me and he said, Mr. Woodruff, I know that, and I will. And to me, that's what makes this a great town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vanni.
I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you. First, to the League of Women Voters and Mr. Woodruff. This is democracy in progress. Second, to Alvaro and Stephen, I am fortunate to have competent, intelligent, and very funny running mates. Each of you bring a wonderfully different perspective to governing. Next, to my PTO, dance, softball, baseball moms, who have supported me through this process by taking on my carpools, cheering on my kids when I couldn't be at their games, and making your own t-shirts. Your love and support I cannot repay. To our campaign manager, Liza, Wonder Woman, I don't know how you do it with those 2 little beautiful boys. Plus making sure that you're positive every day. And of course our volunteers, your commitment is amazing, and now you are like my family. To the supporters and residents who have been in our corner, your stories have touched me. Your belief we can do better drives me to wake up and work hard every single day. I will miss our day-to-day conversations after November 6th, but maybe I'll just keep going, so keep the coffee on for me. To my family, George, Abby, and Ryan, you are my inspiration that makes me want to make the world a better place. There is more joy and love because of each of you. Now go clean your rooms. So humbly, I ask for your support because leadership and change does start at the top. We no longer can afford to exist in separate silos. We need to come together to ensure that our tax dollars are watched over, our grant dollars are back into Berkeley Heights, and this town is properly managed. Our future is bigger than partisanship and accepting the status quo. Purple means more than Democrats and Republicans working hand in hand, but making sure there is balance in our township and diverse opinions and voices. If you believe that we need balance too, I ask that you support all 3 of us, Stephen Yellen, Alvaro Monderos for council, and myself as mayor. Thank you all tonight.
Thank you both for sharing your ideas.
Angie? Good job.
And thank you all for listening so politely. We're going to take a short break now while we head into part 2 with the city council candidates. We're now ready. Shh. We're now ready to start the second portion of our program. Are we on? The format for the second part is same as for the first. Each of the candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. They will then answer the questions that you have submitted on cards. 1 minute for each candidate, half a minute half a minute for rebuttal if required or requested, and then 2 minutes for closing, and then, of course, closing statements by League of Women Voters. So I would like to introduce to you first, from the far side, you'll be able to know who she is, Michelle Greco, Michael D'Aquila, Alvaro Medeiros, and Stephen Yellen. And we will go in that order for opening statements. Ms. Greco.
Hello. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this debate and to all of you watching here. My name is Michelle Greco, and I'm running for town council because I care about our town, and I have the skills and experience to guide us through the change that's happening. My husband Stephen and I moved here 15 years ago. We love this community, and we're proud to be raising our 2 sons here. I'm happy to be here tonight to answer your questions because this is your choice, and it's an important one. I'm a working mom trying to raise my sons with a strong work ethic in the same way that I was raised. I learned about hard work and dedication from my parents who immigrated to this country looking for a better life. They came from strong families in Lima, Peru, and gave up their lives there to create a better future here. My parents worked hard to create a good life for our family, and I'm proud of them and grateful for everything they've given us. I'm happy that my mom actually lives in Berkeley Heights now, and she's here supporting me today. As a child of immigrants, I understand different perspectives, and I love meeting our residents and value their perspectives. I also have a strong work ethic, and I feel that the work I've done over my entire life has prepared me to stand here before you as a candidate. I have 29 years of experience in the finance industry. I manage large projects, and that entails listening to many priorities and executing plans to ensure those priorities are met. I'm responsible for defining a budget and staying on track. I juggle competing priorities, manage risks, and proactively handle issues. I'm excited to contribute these skills to Berkeley Heights. We're all longtime residents who care about our town, but Bob, Michael, and I have valuable experience. We understand the financial, legal, and engineering issues that this town faces every day. We're willing to roll up our sleeves, do the hard work. We have strong ethics, and every decision that we make is in the best interest of the residents of Berkeley Heights.
Thank you. Mr. D'Aquila?
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters, GL students and staff, and the residents that came out to participate in the debate tonight. My name is Michael D'Aquila, and I'm running for re-election to the Township Council. I'm a graduate of SUNY Maritime College with a degree in marine engineering. I moved to Berkeley Heights with my wife, Kathy, in 2005, and together we have 3 children ages 9, 8, and 5. I am a registered professional engineer with 22 years of experience as both a consulting engineer and facility manager across multiple industries, school districts, and municipalities. I have an in-depth knowledge in creating and maintaining annual operating budgets, implementing capital renewal and replacement projects, reducing operating costs, and managing both the union and non-union staff. My expertise with engineering and facility management has allowed me to bring a keen perspective to the township's redevelopment efforts. We have been functioning with out-of-date municipal facilities that do not fit the need of our evolving community, and with significant input from our residents, we are now on our way to a state-of-the-art municipal complex. In fact, we have shovels in the ground. I took the lead in designing the process for the municipal complex and designed a guaranteed maximum price contract. This means that we locked in the maximum price for labor and material based upon a detailed set of specifications. The contract puts the economic risk on the developer and not on the backs of the taxpayers. So if steel continues to rise, the developer pays the increase, not the residents of Berkeley Heights. I've also put a clause in the contract that any saving from the maximum price comes back to the town at a 70% rate, and the builder is incented because they get to keep 30% of these savings. I have protected the taxpayers. As Council Vice President, I have worked with our mayor and council to bring solutions to address the vacant property in town and successfully settle affordable housing obligations. I have worked meticulously to negotiate contracts that would not force financial burdens on taxpayers, as well as ensure developers are adhering to design standards set by the town. This has all been achieved through hard work, expertise, and with the focus on being fiscally responsible with our tax dollars. We are experiencing great momentum in Berkeley Heights, and I know my skills, integrity, and experience are unmatched. I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Alvaro Medeiros. I'm running for town council because I have a commitment to public service and to Berkeley Heights, and I have over 35 years of business experience and accomplishment. I grew up in neighboring towns and settled in Berkeley Heights over 25 years ago with my wife, Amalia. We raised 2 children here, both educated in the public schools, both attending excellent universities, pursuing engineering degrees. I've worked for AT&T for almost 27 years, but my career started in the early 1980s at the Los Angeles factory of a small company based in New Jersey, where we made display components for military and industrial applications. There, over a period of 8 years, I advanced to running the plant and the company's Western operations. Currently, I'm an assistant vice president at AT&T, responsible for some of our largest customers and almost $1 billion in annual revenue. Through hard work and persistence, I've delivered results in 2 different careers and have succeeded in 2 different kinds of companies and sizes of the businesses. I've also been a frequent volunteer. In Berkeley Heights, I volunteered with the Boy Scouts as a member of a scout troop committee and also as a quartermaster and a fundraiser for the Governor Livingston Marching Band. At the present, I'm a member of the Berkeley Heights Environmental Commission. I'm interested in and an advocate of public leadership. I believe that government matters, and that decisions made by leaders have considerable impact on us all, and that government can be a force for good. I ran for town council last year, but lost by a small margin. I'm running again because I remain committed to leading the township to continued success and prosperity. As a member of the council, my goal is to diligently and considerately manage the evolution of the township. With every passing year, we are becoming younger and more diverse, a more younger and diverse population, but also one where many residents are hoping to continue to live in retirement and on fixed incomes. I want changes that accommodate everyone and that ensure we remain a community of informed and engaged residents, able to enjoy a safe and prosperous and welcoming township. Amalia and I were fortunate to settle here. It's a great town, but we can do better. I have the skills, creativity, and willingness to work hard on behalf of others, and as a leader in this township, I will work hard to ensure the very best for all.
Thank you. And Mr. Yellen.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Thank you all very much for coming out here tonight. I want to thank our wonderful video crew from Governor Livingston for recording this debate for the benefit of the public, as well as the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's debate. My name is Stephen Yellen. I'm a lifelong resident here in Berkeley Heights, and I've had family living here for over 50 years. They came here for the same reasons that many, if not all of you here tonight have come, because this is a great community to raise a family and to give your children great opportunities that they might not have elsewhere. So after I graduated from our public schools and got my master's degree, I came back to be an active volunteer in our community. My background and my passion are for communications, for engaging residents, for ensuring that people have a voice, whether it's our volunteers, our senior citizens, or just ordinary residents who feel they haven't been included in the important decisions facing our town. Because we know it's a great community, but we also know we can do better. In my professional life, a couple things that I've done. I'm proud of my work working for United Way, Greater Union County. I helped create double-digit revenue increases, both in terms of the total revenue and the number of donors. And I also was able to find ways to cut costs and reduce unnecessary expenditures. I also did a lot to do outreach to both the small business community and to ordinary donors. Currently, I work in county government as part of the Bureau of Recycling and Planning. Our job is to put out information to the residents and through the towns to provide information to the wider communities about the changes impacting our environment. I'm proud of what I do there and look forward to building on that communications background as a member of the council. I'm running with Alvaro and Angie for one clear reason. The mayor asked earlier if we are better off than we were 4 years ago. I want to ask a different question. Are you satisfied with the progress we've made in the last 4 years, or do you think we can do better? I believe we can. I know that with Angie and Alvaro, we will, and I hope tonight's debate will help demonstrate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The first question, with heavy rainfall events projected to double or triple in frequency, our flood plan will flood much more often in coming years. What will you do to ensure resilience of our infrastructure, sewer plant, chemical plant, bridges, et cetera? And we'll start with Mr. D'Aquila, Mr. Medeiros, Mr. Yellen, and then Ms. Greco.
Infrastructure, underground pipes, my favorite thing. So yes, flooding has been a concern around town. Actually, within the last couple of weeks, we have commissioned our engineer to start looking at how this flooding will be affected. How is our sewer plant going to be affected? How is our stormwater management going to be affected? What are some alternate ways of looking at stormwater management that affect the waterway? You know, on the Environmental Commission, one of the recommendations we always do when we're looking at plans is, oh, how do we mitigate stormwater runoff? Utilization of dry wells, utilization of different alternative ways. Instead of having that water going into the street and into our public wastewaterways, how can we do it to keep it to recharge back into the ground? So yes, that is a concern. It is something that we have asked our engineer to look at, come up with a plan, and start looking at how do we continue to address our stormwater management, wastewater treatment. Unfortunately, as you know, we had some damage with our engine. You know, the emergency generator is starting to show the age of the plant. That is the next thing that we have to continue to look at to what do we have to do to invest in our wastewater treatment plant, take advantage of the engineering trust funds and also different funding available from the state for low cost to no cost loans or anything to make the investment again to continue to make sure that we do have these utilities for us for the next 30 years.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros.
I agree with a lot of what Mike said, because we're both on the Environmental Commission. And certainly our efforts to impose or to extend a lot of the basic skills and techniques of environmental management are appropriate in pursuing that. One of the things that struck me, though, that Mike mentioned is our sewer treatment and the fact that we now sort of uncovered that we have a backup generator that is probably 70 or 60 years old and is continually breaking down at a considerable cost to the township. It surprises me that we haven't done anything about that sooner. I think that should be a priority. We're spending about $250,000 just to keep it running. And we ought to have a better capital plan to replace it. It's a critical feature of our sewer treatment, and we ought to get on it quickly.
Thank you. Mr. Yellen?
So I absolutely agree with what Alvaro said. We are facing a lot of long-term infrastructural needs that are going to have to be addressed in the next decade. And we have known these things are going to be happening now for several years. So the fact that we do not have such a plan in place right now is regrettable. And I think it's one reason why we need new leadership, because we need to have a council and a mayor that will manage these things in advance and not necessarily react to things as they happen, as we are now reacting with regard to the wastewater treatment plant. But if we're also going to talk about our infrastructure needs with regards to the plant, regards to our pipelines, we need to make sure that we're looking out for the residents of Berkeley Heights. Angie, Alvaro, and I are very concerned about the plan that Warren Township has put forward to build 368 housing units directly next to the Berkeley Heights border. Our town should do everything in its power to prevent that from taking place, because it is not in the interests of the people of Berkeley Heights. It adds an additional strain, or would, to our infrastructure, to our environment, and to a part of the community that's very ill-suited for that kind of housing density. We cannot allow that to go forward.
Thank you. Ms. Greco?
Yes, thank you. So with regard to stormwater management, I'd like to talk about a couple of things. The first thing that comes to mind is, as part of our municipal complex development, we have planned for stormwater management system that is being built underneath the complex. So that's something that, you know, we reacted to feedback from the neighbors in the community who were concerned about how the water runoff was going to impact them. So that's one proactive step that we're taking. And in terms of our master plan, I know that we do have a master plan, and most recently it's been updated in a few ways. So re-examination report was prepared in 2017, adopted by the Planning Board. Housing element and fair share plan was also prepared, and an amended master plan housing element and fair share plan was prepared. Most recently, our land use element of the master plan was sent to the Planning Board in August. So we are proactively planning for the impact of infrastructure and things such as storms and how they're going to impact our town.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a further statement?
Yes, I do. I disagree with the statement of saying that we have not planned for our wastewater treatment plant. Our director of sewer plant, the first thing he done when he came on board is start to look at all the different things, the aging infrastructure of the wastewater treatment plant. When I went on a tour with that plant, I asked him, hey, what Did you look at that? What are you doing with that transformer? You see, mean the transformer there that we had a survey on, infrared done, and making sure it's going to last for the next 10 years, 20 years? Absolutely. He is looking at that stuff. He is making sure we have a plan in place. An emergency generator that's 50 years old, yes, it did fail. Things happen. But we also made the investment, made the decision to rebuild that, and now put another 20 years into it. So I disagree. Our director has put into the work. He has looked into the plan, and is now now we are looking to implement and find the funding for that plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
A brief rebuttal on in regards to the master plan. I agree the master plan is an ideal place to prepare and plan for the future. What I was disappointed to is that the master plan is now beyond the 10 years since we've updated it, and we're only just now starting to take it through the planning process. So I think it's well overdue. I'm surprised that it's the same consultant who's running the master plan is also the one that was also working on the municipal town complex, and my suspicion is that his attention was diverted.
I would also like to point out, with regards to the wastewater treatment plant, this is not a new issue. I've been going to council meetings for years, and many times over those years, there's been discussion about the aging infrastructure at that plant, the need to have a complete overhaul, the fact that we can't afford to keep patching it. And so the concern I have, and I think residents have, is because we've been doing these short-term patchings, we're leading to a serious issue with the plant breaking down now, when had we done the long-term investment on it sooner, we wouldn't be in this situation. And I think we needed to act more promptly on serious infrastructure concerns like these.
Okay, moving forward. With the affordable housing settlement reached by the town, there will be additional development coming. What are your thoughts about how to manage this development? And we will start with Mr. Medeiros, Mr. Yellen, Ms. Greco, and Mr. Aquila.
I guess I'd like to start by saying that I am actually supportive of the agreements that we struck with on affordable housing. I think Mark Facher did an excellent job in negotiating those. I also think that the way that the development has come about here in Berkeley Heights, with a lot of it concentrated into downtown. In fact, in several buildings emptying onto a single road, Sherman Avenue, I think is going to create a substantial amount of crowding and traffic. I think I agree with what was said in the earlier debate, that we do need a community impact fee in addition to pilots, because there is going to be considerable impact to the township. I think there's going to be, beyond the roads and the traffic and the burden on our schools, I think we're also going to have challenges with the fire department, with the rescue with the volunteer services in town. So I think there's quite a lot of work that we've got to do to manage the additional burden that has been imposed on the town as a result of the affordable care settlements.
Thank you. Mr. Yellen.
Well, like Alvaro and Angie, I do agree that the governing body, with regards to the number of units that were negotiated, made the best of a bad hand. We were in a very difficult situation. We had to go first, and I think Mr. Facher did an excellent job, and I thanked him publicly at the time for the work that he did. I think a couple of concerns that we have now is that, first of all, we had the opportunity to negotiate community impact fees. Alvaro mentioned that, Angie mentioned that. What that means is that a developer would be charged an additional fee per unit that they build that could be used towards various infrastructure improvements in the community. Last year, Alvaro and Susan Pogue, who's now on the council, proposed this, and members of the governing body said, you can't do that, it's illegal. Well, in fact, it is legal. It's been done, as Angie mentioned. And in fact, as the mayor mentioned earlier tonight, it is one of the options that are available with redevelopment agreements. So we missed a golden opportunity there to ensure we get more revenue for our town in return for the additional strains and costs on our infrastructure that we're going to have. Going forward, we do need to, as Alvaro mentioned, create a citizens review committee to help ensure that we bring in experts and community wisdom, that we have the best available long-term investment for the community. That's one major thing we can do differently going forward, along with community impact fees on future agreements that might come forward.
Ms. Greco.
Yes, with regard to the affordable housing settlement, I'm I'm going to chime in also and praise Mark and the council for the excellent agreement that was negotiated. Just to explain the impact, we successfully negotiated from 860 to 210 units. What this means, though, aside from smaller developments and impact on our infrastructure, is that it gave us more control when negotiating with the developers on what they would build. So we basically had the upper hand. So we successfully negotiated with these developers to have, at their cost, self-contained parking, street improvements, traffic lights, and sidewalks, just to name a few. The other thing I'd like to say is we have these carefully negotiated agreements, and I think we need the people with the right expertise sitting in those seats on the council that will hold those developers accountable, that understand these financial, engineering, and legal issues. So, and then the other thing I just want to mention is that, oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
You can finish your sentence.
No, I just wanted to mention that our rolling capital plan that I mentioned, a few components that we recently implemented, is handling the infrastructure and addressing those issues.
Thank you. Mr. D'Aquila.
Yes, we have a solid and comprehensive plan that addresses both the near and long-term impact of the development. With the traffic study, we are getting, as the mayor mentioned before, the traffic light on Snyder and Locust, and also other streetscape improvements. But let's talk about the community impact fee. When we negotiated this project, this was also under affordable housing requirements. Any more fees on this project would then result in the fact that we would have to increase the density for that project to pay for said fees. We put together the affordable housing program with the pilot agreement to get our density down. So yes, I understand the community impact fee is an available fee, but at the same token, you're adding more money that the developer would have to spend, and they would have to offset that spend by utilizing or increase the density. I'm sorry, I agree with the development we came with. We have a pilot. We're going to bring positive funds into the town. We have a lower density, and we have controlled building within that, and we're getting improvements to the town, streetscape improvements, and also, again, traffic improvement as our studies continue to come in.
Thank you.
Two things quickly. One is that a pilot agreement actually offers a really great deal for a developer because long-term they make a lot more revenue than they would under a standard development project. So if we're going to give that kind of negotiation with a developer, I don't think it's very complicated to work out a negotiation where a community impact fee is also included as part of that process. Secondly, the concern with pilot agreements is that the vast majority of revenue goes to the township, but zero goes to the Board of Education. So we're looking potentially at over $200,000 in lost revenue to the Board of Education and a lot of new students that will be added to the schools, much above the standard that was put forward by the school district. It's actually a lot more students, most likely, than that number.
Anyone else?
Just respect to student impact, the study has shown what the student impact, and it is a negligible impact for the fact that we are already down 240 students already. That does not mean we have excluded and will never ever talk with the school district if such need comes in the future. That is always still available.
Next, with increased development, we will have impact on our roads. What can we do about our roads? Mr. Yellen, Ms. Greco, Mr. Aquila, and Mr. Medeiros.
That's a great question. Before I get to that, let me point out that the affordable housing question with regards to number of students is predicated on the notion that people in one-bedroom apartments do not have children. I live in an apartment complex. Everyone else on that floor in one-bedroom apartment is married with kids. So I think the study there is off. With regards to roads, we do need to improve upon the current plan that's in place for paving our roads in the long term. We can't afford to miss grants like we have twice in the last 4 years of over $400,000 potentially in road repairs that we could have had right now. But the thing we also ought to do is institute what's called micropaving. It's a technology that's built in when you start a new road that can extend the life of a new road that's been paved for several years, up to a decade. And I think that kind of long-term responsible planning can be put in place to ensure that the 15-year waiting list that we have for roads doesn't keep going on to the point that when you get to those 15 years, you've already had to pave the original roads on that list all over again. We need to do a lot better with this kind of long-term road planning. I've talked to so many residents going door to door who see their roads and say, things aren't getting better, they're getting worse, and we have to do better on that.
Thank you. Ms. Greco?
Yes, with regard to our roads were neglected for many, many years. And in 2014, we implemented a 15-year rolling capital roads plan. So this plan is a long-term plan that takes advantage or leverages county and state grants. If we tried to do the roads any more quickly than that, we would lose out on those grants. It's a well thought out plan because the analysis was done across all the miles of roads. I believe there were 52 in Berkeley Heights, believe it or not. The analysis was done to grade the roads on which were the worst to the best, and that's how the plan of attack was made. But that assessment is done every single year. It's revisited every year because with weather and everything, the roads change, so the plan changes with it, that's why it's a rolling plan. And the other thing I wanted to mention was with regard to grants, that we have applied for grants, and we have also implemented shared services to help with the cost of the infrastructure that the development will be causing. And some of the shared services plans that we have in place are vehicles and equipment, field maintenance, IT services. We have these types of services, these types of shared services, across various different municipalities, the Board of Ed, and the county.
Mr. Tequila.
Yes, smarter maintenance on our equipment. As Mr. Stephen has said, yes, we need to look at different technology, and I agree. We have to look at better technology, how we can treat our roads and how our team can take care of it. Micro-milling, getting machines out there that can do small patches versus small milling of roads to take care of that. In addition to that, getting hot boxes to do much better. But also creative grants, as you said. A couple months ago, I mentioned at a town council meeting, hey, everyone, go online, vote for Berkeley Heights to get the Domino's for Pizza pothole repair. Guess what? I got a call this afternoon from our administrator. We got that grant, $5,000 to go towards fixing our potholes. So yeah, we are being creative. We're finding grants, $5,000. But I agree, we need to get the tools in our DPW's team's hands in order to do more and better patching of our roads. In addition to that, again, going after our grants, staying with our, getting the $250,000 grants from the state and also $50,000 or so grants from the county to, again, tackle our roads.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros.
Thank you. So a couple points in regards to the 15-year plan that Ms. Greco mentioned. So I started attending, I think I've attended every single town council meeting since I started running for office. And I remember the presentations on the plan and how often I saw it subsequently change over and over and over again. And I know that very frequently that plan devolves into a patchwork plan of repair a part of the road, but not the entire road. One road that I would point out is Angie Devaney's actually, which was paved halfway and then suddenly stopped. So I don't think the plan is fully baked. One of the things that, to Stephen's point about micro paving, is that New Providence is actually an advocate of that and has abandoned patching in favor of micro surfacing as a much less expensive, more long-lasting solution, and that's something that we ought to take a lot longer or stronger look at. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
I actually want to add to what Mr. Medeiros, what Alvaro just said. Sorry, Alvaro. I used to live on Dogwood Lane, and our road, along with Lorraine and Lenape, were supposed to have been paved roughly about the same time. They work in a cluster of roads usually when you repair them. Dogwood got paved last year when a group of residents put a tourist attraction sign at the bottom of it, come see the worst potholes in town. Suddenly that was fixed. Lorraine and Lenape have been told, and we've talked to residents there, that they were supposed to be fixed last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, and now it's 2018, and they're going to have to wait at least till next year to get it paved. So when we talk about responsible management for paving our roads, these are the kind of examples that we're getting as we're talking to residents. They're not satisfied with what we're doing. They know we can do better.
Yes, just one question. One number I want to throw out there. 8.63 miles of road have been paved already so far. So yes, we are making it different. And yes, I'm sorry, we haven't gotten to every road yet, but we are getting there. 8.63 miles of road already paved.
I would highlight the DOT, New Jersey Department of Transportation grants that were missed in 2014 and 2017, totaling $400,000. Could have paved a few more roads. Thank you.
Okay. What actions would you include to make minorities in town feel more accepted and more integrated into the community. Mr. Yellen, Mr. Alvarez, Mr. D'Aquila, and Ms. Greco.
I think, that was just the same order as the previous question, wasn't
Yeah, we can start with Mrs. Greco.
No, it wasn't. Close, but it wasn't.
it? I apologize.
You-
I'm
you
very
can-
happy to answer that
you can
question
look at my
first.
chart later.
So this town has been changing tremendously as our community has grown and thrived since, as I know, since growing up here. And the important thing that I have learned is that we have got to ensure every resident, doesn't matter how long they've been here, doesn't matter who they are or where they come from, they need to have a government that they know cares about them, respects them, and will work with them to ensure that everyone truly is included in this community. That is one reason we have to work with all kinds of community groups, not just Diversity Council, but beyond that, to ensure that the incidents that have occurred in our town, that we've seen about, that we've heard about, that they are addressed not just by words, but with action. I think what we need to do is have a community of residents come together to form a kind of broad movement, to work with our schools, to work with our community groups, to bring in outside experts, as the Diversity Council has done, to find out what are the best things we can do to ensure that the kind of incidents we've talked about don't happen. We have a police department that has been doing a great job in interfacing with the Diversity Council and with residents in that direction, and we need to work with them too on that.
Mr. Medeiros.
Thank you. So one of the committees that was mentioned in the earlier debate, the Diversity Committee, is a significant solution, or I should say, method of addressing the sense of welcome that diverse people people of diverse backgrounds might expect or want. And I would point out that last year, the Diversity Committee struggled to get an ordinance approved by the township supporting diversity as a notion in the township. And it was only because an incident occurred around about this time of year, actually, that the township finally got around to passing a diversity ordinance. And so I think it starts with leadership, and it starts with the willingness to step up and recognize and advocate on behalf of diverse populations. And I think that that's something that Stephen and Angie and I would absolutely advocate immediately.
Mr. D'Aquila?
Yes, no, I do agree that the Diversity Council has been doing a great job on bringing that in there. I also worked for a New Jersey City University, which does have a very diverse community, so I'd work with that every day. Do have a little bit different recollection on the passing of the open and welcoming resolution, but more importantly, he said, doing what we have to do, open for communication with our residents, open communication for all diversity within the township to be open to be involved with all the different programs in here, and that's what I would do.
And Ms. Greco?
With regard to welcoming people to our community, I've never seen such a welcoming community in my entire life. I moved here from New York City, didn't know a soul, 8 months pregnant. Immediately, I felt very welcomed. People were very friendly. And with regard to our mayor and town council supporting the Diversity Council, I'm a big supporter, and in fact, the mayor took me to my first Diversity Council meeting, so I think he is also a big supporter. But when I first learned about the Diversity Council, I think they're doing a fantastic job, but my first question was, I don't understand. I don't think we have a problem. There's no diversity problem in this town, and because I feel like everyone is always welcome. And what I got to understand is it's not a matter of a problem. I think it's just a matter of trying to improve things even further, trying to educate people and trying to be ready for, especially in the coming years, the changes that are going to happen in this town. And getting together just to enjoy our different cultures, et cetera.
One other thing I wanted to add, I think it's critical that the governing body not so much talk as listen to residents in our community who feel they have not been included, who feel that there is discrimination that goes on. And that's something that Angie Alvaro and I have been doing across our community. With regards to the open and welcoming resolution, it was originally proposed much earlier in 2017, and no action was taken on until ultimately it was voted on the night before the 2017 election. So I think that we have to make clear that this governing body, if we're elected, we don't claim to have all the answers, but the answers are out in our community, and we need to reach out to our community to make sure that inclusion takes place.
Okay, thank you. If you are elected, and 2 of you will be, how would you reach across party lines to work together for the benefit of Berkeley Heights? Mr. Medeiros, Mr. D'Aquila, Ms. Greco, and Mr. Yellen.
I love that question. One of the things that I pride myself on, that I've taken most pleasure in this township, is meeting people from not just diverse backgrounds, but of diverse political opinions, diverse parties. And I've actually worked with, as I said, with Mike on the Environmental Commission. I've attended events where with the mayor and other members of the township. I do enjoy working with my opponents, and I don't believe I'll have any difficulty at all bridging the divide. I'm a strong proponent of collaborating with people to solve problems. I don't care what their backgrounds, political beliefs, or thinking is. I think if we face a problem, we need to solve it, and I will absolutely work with people who are different from me to achieve that.
Mr. D'Aquila?
Yes, kind of the same thing, I guess. After November 6th, whether it's an R or a D at the end of the day, we're all on the council for one reason: to help support Berkeley Heights and grow it. I work in Hudson County, so I'm a little bit of a fish out of water at times out there working at the university. But at the end of the day, they don't judge me on what my political affiliation is or anything like that. It's about getting the job done, and at the end of the day, it's about getting accomplishment done for the township, regardless of the party affiliation.
Ms. Greco?
I'm not a politician, so I think reaching across party lines is not really an issue for me, because it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that we have good people, qualified people working on the council, working on our various committees, and that's what I've seen. This is part of the reason that I would like to join this team of Bob and Michael, is because I don't see partisanship. I see people that care about the best interests of Berkeley Heights. Every decision that we make is in the best interest of Berkeley Heights. During the campaign, I know we do hear some political things, and it really disturbs me, because we have such a small, tight-knit community, and I don't think we have a political problem, and I really hope that we don't develop one as a result of these elections.
Thank you. Mr. Yellen?
So I also agree it's a great question, and I'm proud of the fact that I have worked both formally and informally with voters of all political backgrounds. For example, some years ago, I was part of a group that was successfully opposed, with the help of the community, a proposed development actually where some of these affordable and regular housing units in Warren are supposed to be built now. I worked with a broad bipartisan coalition to help defeat an initial project that might have gone there that the residents across town did not support. I think the important thing to understand is that it's not about party. It's why our campaign color is purple, because it's about bringing blue and red together to make positive change in our town. I think that's the reason why there are a lot of people who are Republicans who are crossing party lines to support us this year, because to them, it's not about party. It doesn't matter who you're voting for Senate or Congress. It matters about who can do the best job of doing the right thing for our town going forward. And that's the kind of attitude I would bring to the governing body. It's the kind of attitude we'd have with the Citizens Review Committee, is to have a broad bipartisan group. And I think we have to have that balance as well in terms of who we appoint to township committees, to make sure that we have a balance where people who do want to be involved aren't rejected or aren't prevented from doing so when you have some people who are in multiple committees. We need that kind of, again, nonpartisan balance as well.
The annual budget of the town cannot increase by more than 2%. What would you do? What would you increase or decrease to keep the budget in balance? And please explain why. Mr. D'Aquila, Ms. Greco, Mr. Yellen, and Mr. Medeiros.
Maintaining budgets of $11 to $12 million, essentially without having increases is something I've been doing since 2007, working for 2 different universities. Every year, we go with a zero-based budget. We start at zero, not saying we have no budget, but start at the beginning. And look at every dollar, every line, and every cent to saying, okay, we spent $300,000, we spent $100,000, we spent whatever dollar on this line. Do we need to send that same amount for this year? What has changes? What grants have come in? What different shared services have come in? How can we partner across between New Providence, Madison, Summit, the county? What can we do to find alternate revenue streams in there? Keeping it at a 2% cap is a difficult and a challenge, and I thank our CFO for doing that every year. That is why we have to continue to find alternative funding, different ways to be smart about our spending, and also being efficient by getting equipment for our team to do things more efficiently and effectively and spend more time elsewhere. Thank you.
Ms. Greco?
First of all, I just want to note that our town only gets 17% of our total property taxes, and the county gets 25%. Of that 17, 87% is already earmarked for contractual obligations. 10% is already earmarked for non-discretionary spending, non-discretionary operating, such as legal and audit fees. That leaves us 3%. So we need to be very diligent in managing our expenses. We're operating on a shoestring, basically, which is why it's very important to have people with the right experience, with the budget experience, that can manage our budget, that can go through our budget with a fine-tooth comb, which is what I would do, to identify efficiencies and maximize every single taxpayer dollar. I have the experience. I learned about budgets at top-tier investment banks. There's no room for error there, and I intend to be proactive to make every taxpayer dollar count.
Mr. Yellen?
So as Mr. DeQuilla and Ms. Greco mentioned, our discretionary budget is fairly limited. One thing I do want to point out, however, legally speaking, we cannot have a deficit. We're required to balance our revenues against our expenditures. But one thing we can do is make sure we have all available outside sources of funding, such as grants, that we truly are looking at our budget, not just to say zero-based budgeting, but that we're actually looking carefully at every line item, but that we also utilize resources we have here in town, like our wastewater treatment plant, and see if there's other options we can use that for example, to bring in additional revenues. But the reality is that we also have to be careful with the money you've been giving us to spend. Our taxes in the last 5 years on the municipal portion of our budget have gone up 18%. On the Board of Education, it's about 12%, and on the county, it's about 11%. So even with the limited share of resource that we have, the town government has been increasing taxes more, and in addition, we're having the major infrastructure, with the municipal complex, we're increasing our town debt by a very large amount to cover the cost of that. So I think we need to have new leaders who can manage better, not the leaders that we've had managing up till now. I simply think we can do better than that.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros?
And to piggyback on what Stephen just said about seeking alternative sources, so yeah, excellent ideas in terms of thinking out of the box to find other sources of income. But one of the things that I'd like to highlight is the fact that last year, or earlier this year, I should say, my last year running mate, Susan Pogue, recommended that we form a grant writing committee, a committee to find opportunities for other sources of revenue. That's something that the township chose not to adopt, something that I think is foolish, because finding grants can be very complicated. There's a very wide variety of sources and applications for them, and it's not something that I think a committee would have time well spent doing. The other thing is that, to Stephen's point about Citizens Review Committee, what we'd like to do is open up to the township to voice their ideas and thinking, because there's a lot of creativity in the public in this township. We have experts in this township that certainly exceed the expertise on a town council, and I think we should leverage those resources to find other sources of funding. Thank you.
Thank you. What specific projects do you think the town should be seeking grants to support? Ms. Greco, Mr. Yellen, Mr. Medeiros, and Mr. Aquila.
Okay, one thing that I want to note about grants is that we need to be proactive in identifying what we can apply for. Grants are complicated. It's not just a matter of going out and filling out a form and asking for money. Most of them require matching funds. So before we go out and ask for a grant, we need to make sure that we can match the funds. We have applied for and received many grants. Most recently, you probably saw the article in the paper about the $300,000 COP federal grant, which was a partnership between the Board of Ed and the Police Department. That was a federal grant for school safety, and it was not a matching grant. There are a number of other grants that we've applied for recently: Safe Routes to School, Safe Streets to Transit, Transportation Alternative Set Aside, all grants that are for sidewalk improvements and the like to make the streets safer for our students. So there are many grants that we've applied for. And the one thing I do want to mention about grants is Alvaro mentioned about Susan's idea about the grant committee. And you also mentioned that grants require a lot of expertise. So the feeling is that the expertise needs to come from the committees themselves, and then we are working with Susan to try to figure out a way to make the solution work, perhaps not with a committee, but with one or two specific volunteers to help those committees that are the subject matter experts.
Thank you. Mr. Yellen?
The fact that it is difficult to make sure you have the right application for grants is precisely why we need a committee of including experts that are here in this community to apply for them. We cannot have, as to use the term Angie mentioned earlier, we can't keep having silos, or one department reaches out for its own grants and another department is looking out for its own grants. It's that kind of problem that led to us, I think, in one reason, we may have missed out on $400,000 in road repair grants that we mentioned earlier, and those are not matching grants. It's like it's the Oprah Winfrey of grants. You get a grant and you get a grant. And we have to do better on that. And I've seen Susan, Councilwoman Susan Pogue, push for that, and it hasn't been done. So to say that there's a process underway to set up this committee, we should just set up the committee. We have someone who's proposed this. We have residents who have come forward to offer their expertise, and they've been turned away. And that's not acceptable. So I think that's one major way we can ensure that we get, our increased improvement of grants, things like the library infrastructure grant that we talked about, using Angie's incredible background and experience, both on the county and the state level, to help us identify additional grants that we can work on. And these are the kinds of things that can help offset the tax increases that otherwise we're going to have.
Mr. Medeiros?
And I would just add that I don't think there's any specific area that we would pursue in terms of grants. It's really about, because of the diversity of the grants that are available out there, I think we should pursue any means to lower the costs that the township would otherwise incur by finding grant alternatives to those. And just to add to what Stephen said in regards to finding not missing grants and working with the state and the Union County, I think the contacts, and I think there's that we have with Angie and with Stephen in the county and in the state would lead us to have a better result of finding grants that and pressing for them that might be less available to other townships.
Mr. D'Aquila?
So, we've heard a lot of negative against our volunteers who have gone after grants, and I'd like to stop it. I'd like to point out the positives. $1.2 million worth of grants have come into this township in the last 3 years. Alternate side of grants, this Domino's paving for potholes, are all different grants. As far as looking at alternate sizes, we talked about it before during the mayor's debate. What do we do for greening technologies? One of the things we're looking on as far as the building is going after incentive money from the state. There's a lot of money from the state Board of Public Utilities, clean energy programs, to go after money for the programs, to continue to bring down the cost of the projects. We have been diligent. Ms. Kingsley has been successful in going after the grants and submitted grants for safe routes to schools, the $300,000 coming in. So can we do more grants? Absolutely, but we have been doing a great job getting grants, and $1.2 million in grants over the last 3 years is nothing, no small task.
I think it's silly to say that by saying we can do better with grants, we're somehow blaming our volunteers. It is the governing body's responsibility through our administrative departments to ensure that we identify those opportunities for grants. And with a grants committee, we can bring volunteers together to ensure they have the expertise or the people they can work with to ensure that we get those grants. We want to support our volunteers. We want to help with what they do. We don't want them to be missing out on opportunities, and it's not a question of blaming them about it. And again, I think that's something that we can just do better on. It's not a knock on anyone.
There's been discussion around fields and access to public space in town. Please share your thoughts on how to improve these. Mr. Medeiros, Ms. Greco, Mr. Yellen, and Mr. D'Aquila.
So I think Angie said this often in her, when she speaks about the embarrassment that she has when with her kids are on sports fields with other towns visiting, and they've been in horrible shape. And I know that Susan Polk frequently complained about the walkways that populate or run through our township that are in miserable conditions. So I think access to fields, access to the woods in our township is in woefully declining state, and that's actually one of the reasons that Angie, Stephen, and I wanted to get engaged, because I think we've seen that the services are deteriorating. The township does not seem to be managed well, because there's a lot of things that are not getting fixed in the township, and that's one of the major drivers behind our candidacy. Thank you.
Ms. Greco?
I'm actually surprised to hear that, because recently I was at a local baseball field, and someone from a neighboring community actually came up to me and said that they are very impressed with the way that our fields are looking, because I think recently we've been making a lot of improvements. They said, and I quote, "I love the way that Berkeley Heights is getting their act together, and I wish my town would do the same." The responsibilities for our fields is shared between County Board of Ed and Township, so collaboration and teamwork is essential. We recently realized that the process to report field issues was very much broken, which could contribute to the problems with the fields that we had. But our Recreation Commission has stepped up, and they've done some amazing work. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the baseball fields, because that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Over the past couple of months alone, they've brought in 50 tons of infield mix to regrade the fields, 25 tons of pro-choice mix to help improve water absorption. They are rebuilding 3 pitchers' mounds that were not built according to they weren't Little League compliant. So there is a lot of improvement happening with our volunteers from the Rec Commission, and our fields are really looking better than ever.
Thank you. Mr. Yellen?
So I think you have to talk to the parents that have been active in the PAL, active as sports coaches, and Angie and Alvaro and I have talked to a lot of them. They're not happy with how things have been done, and they're not happy about what's being done right now. You know, it's almost like deja vu. 2 years ago, I sat on a pretty similar stage with Jill Zada, and we, as candidates, talked about bringing our community groups together to deal with this exact same issue. Because it's not just about making sure the fields are safe to run on, it's about having amenities, you know, having good dugouts and having, you know, the appropriate, you know, bathrooms and concessions and all those things with it. And if you look at us compared to our neighbors, we do have a lot of ground to make up. So we have to bring those groups together. We cannot have people in their own silos dealing with these problems on their own as best they can. And that's, again, something that I know Angie, Alvar, and I are very determined to help make a positive impact in. The important thing is to bring our community groups together, the Board of Education, the town, the county, the PAL. And we need to have that kind of collaborative effort to make that kind of long-term positive change.
Thank you. Mr. D'Aquila?
Yes, I guess I do have a different opinion with Stephen. I guess that's why we're running against each other. We have partnered with the Board of Ed. We partnered with them with bringing on True Green, the treatment company, to take care of all the fields and doing that. We made the investment in the batwing mower that now cut our fields down, so instead of cutting the field once a week, now we can get it 2 to 3 times a week to take care of the turf. Partnered again with the Board of Education, putting the dugouts in the Upper Columbia fields, where we did the footings and foundation, and they took care of building the structure around there. We are making significant improvements in there, in the fields and everything. I guess it was a question asked during the mayor's debate, if you had unlimited funding, what would you do? I would love to turf all the fields, but it's a very expensive idea. So we are improving our fields. We opened up the snack shop. Our volunteers and everyone are working on it to improve our field conditions, make the fields better. My son is in Little League and is looking forward to playing in Horseshoe in the spring once all that work is done there. So I'm sorry, I disagree. We are doing a great job. We are bringing our fields up to date, and we are now getting noticed, as Ms. Greco said, by other towns coming in and visiting.
Thank you.
I think we have to draw a distinction between fields that the Board of Education has a direct involvement with and the fields that are strictly within the township or the township partnering with the county. Those are the ones that, you know, Alvaro and Angie and I have talked about the most, because those are the ones that need the most urgent upgrades. And I think it's important to note that candidates like myself have been calling for these upgrades for years. So I would pose the question, Should we be voting for the people who are just doing this now, or should we vote for the candidates and the teams that have been pushing for this all along?
What is one key accomplishment that you can share with us, and how would this help the town? Mr. DeQuilo, Mr. Yellen, Mr. Medeiros, and Ms. Greco.
The key feature that I bring to the town is involved with our municipal complex. The different way, the alternative way of how we're constructing it, the guaranteed maximum price for the construction side, a much detailed and stronger architectural contract to make sure our architect and engineer and the professionals on there are designing it too as our requirement. Over the next 2 years as a project, and if I'm re-elected, we'll continue to monitor this stuff and monitor the programs, bringing into it alternative ideas on both resources and energy efficiency and the green technologies within the building. You know, I live, breathe, and eat engineering. That's my life. I'm a professional engineer. I've been doing it for 22 years. And this project that's going on was one of the reasons why I decided to run for council 3 years ago.
Mr. Yellen?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What is the key accomplishment that you can, what is one key accomplishment that you can share with us, and how would this help the town?
So I think if I haven't obviously been on the Township Council yet, but one thing I can say I'm particularly proud of, for 2 years, there was not a reporter from the independent press able to cover Township Council meetings. They didn't have anyone to send. So I went to every meeting and provided an update as a letter to the editor, to the independent press. And so for that time, I was the only print source for residents in this town about what was going on in our community. And I kept doing that until the paper folded. So this is one example of a track record I have in trying to do everything I can to help engage our community, inform them, and get their input. So that is the focus I would work on as a councilman, to ensure that we are doing everything we can to engage residents in our community. That means building on the things that are just now being done. So we need to make sure we have a print newsletter, a townwide e-newsletter. We need live streaming of council meetings so that people can send in their feedback in real time. We need to have more meetings on times that are convenient for residents and not for the governing body. And we need to make sure that we have opportunities for residents to send in their feedback in ways that are not being done now. That is the area I know I can make the best positive difference.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros.
I guess I can't point to one key accomplishment. I would say that things that I'm most proud of is my volunteerism in the township. And I highlight that just because I think that that is what is most meaningful and most important in this town is the volunteer spirit. There's a lot of people that support that work for no salary, for the fire department, for the rescue squad. They're there and they save our lives. And I encourage volunteerism to its fullest. I admire every volunteer, of which there are a great many in this town, and I would continue to promote that. And as I say, I'm very proud of my own volunteerism as well.
Thank you. Ms. Greco.
I have 29 years of experience in the finance industry. My analytical skills, budgeting experience are critical to Berkeley Heights. I earned a degree in accounting and finance, and I started my career as an auditor at Price Waterhouse. I eventually was recruited to Goldman Sachs, where I quickly established a reputation as a problem solver. I was promoted to vice president, and I was a founding member of their new project management department. I left Goldman Sachs after a long, successful career, went to Credit Suisse, and I was recently recruited to Morgan Stanley by a former colleague. The work that I do ensures that my firm meets their strategic objectives while watching the bottom line. The biggest responsibility of our council is managing the budget. My experience makes me the right person to go through the budget and our workflows with a fine-tooth comb to maximize efficiencies and make sure that we are making the best use of every taxpayer dollar while we're meeting our residents' needs.
Thank you. Yes.
I also should have mentioned earlier, I've also been a student at the Blaustein School for Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers University. It's one of the elite schools in the country when it comes to budgets, public policy, planning, and I've taken a number of courses in that. So I think that all of us on the stage would bring and do bring a understanding and experience of how we do budget management as part of the town council. So I don't think we have to be concerned about that. I think the more important concerns are how we can do better in terms of engaging our community, how we can do better in managing the municipal complex, how we can do better with all of the long-term planning that has to be done. And I think that's where the real issue is.
It's now time for your closing statements to tell us why you're fabulous and we should vote for you. This is serious. Mr. Yellen, Mr. Medeiros, Mr. D'Aquila, and Ms. Greco.
Well, thank you, everyone, once again. And I do want to say, all of us who are running, we're not doing this for fame. We're not doing this for power. Certainly not doing it for the money. Dear God, have you seen the income, annual salary for these people? We're doing it because we love the town. We're doing it because we want to help our community. And so I think the real choice in this election is not about whether someone wants to do good or bad, but are we doing the best we can for our town, and can we do better? And from all the conversations that Angie, that Alvaro and I have had with residents, the answer is unambiguously, yes, we are a great town, but yes, we can do better. And I think that's the real issue in this election. We are a lot of areas where there's room for improvement. The municipal complex has already been $4 million over budget. We've missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars of road repair grants. A lot of residents have come to make it clear they don't feel included, they don't feel valued or respected, or they get, rebuked at the podium simply for offering their opinion. And so I think we can do better. And I know that collectively, with our combined skills, that Angie, Albert, and I, we can and will make a positive difference for this town. That's what's at stake here in this election. It's why we have support not just from Democrats, but from Republicans and independents, many of whom have not voted locally for a Democrat in decades, if ever. And so that's what's at stake in this election, is can we do better than we are now, and what kind of positive direction can we set for our community? It's not about us or them. It's about all of us coming together to do the best job we can for our town. So I hope that on November 6th, regardless of who else you vote for, that you will give Angie, Alvaro, and myself the opportunity to give back to this town on the governing body. I believe we can, as a town, make sure that we, through our efforts, pave the way for the 2020s so that by the time our term in office is done, we have left our town in a much better situation than when we began. That's why we're all here. That's why we're running. So I respectfully ask for your support, as someone who's born and raised here in town, to have the opportunity to give back to our community as a member of the Township Council. Please vote for Stephen Yellen, Alvaro Medeiros for council, and Angie Devaney for mayor for change we can agree on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Medeiros.
I was very proud last year to join Susan Pogue up here and consider myself extremely lucky to be on a ticket with Angie Devaney, Stephen Yellen, and I think we're very lucky to have the two of them being willing to serve in this town. I was also very proud of the campaign we ran last year, and I'm particularly proud of the one that we're running this year. I think it represents some of the smart, creative, aggressive campaigning that defines the government that we would form. I've most enjoyed the opportunity of meeting many residents around town or at events hosted by their neighbors and friends. Almost invariably, I've found that residents are grateful to hear from us and to have the opportunity of being heard. These meetings have actually been my favorite aspect of campaigning, and it's something that I want to and plan to carry forward if I'm elected to the town council. Engaging people in the township is both a very rewarding experience and also an integral aspect of leadership. And while I enjoy the dialogue, I also believe that each of us can learn from others, and among us there are many views and ideas that are unique and new, and that I know that can bring value to our community. We are, after all, a community of neighbors with many common values and goals. We all want to feel that our investment in living here, whether a recent arrival over many decades, whatever the size or age of our home or property, will remain safe and secure, and that we, our children, friends and neighbors, our family and extended family, will continue to enjoy the quiet, peaceful, prosperous town that attracted us here in the first place. I hope to be able to serve in the Berkeley Heights Township Council and help make that a certainty. Meanwhile, I congratulate and thank our fellow candidates on the Township Council. I thank them for their service. I urge everyone here to come out and vote on November 6th, and please encourage everyone that you know who is able to exercise the right to decide who will lead your town, who will hold their congressional district seat, and one of our 2 Senate seats. Finally, I ask, like Stephen, for your vote for Angie and Stephen and myself. Vote column A. Vote for a change that we deserve. Thank you for your time and attention, and good night.
Thank you. Mr. D'Aquila, I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out tonight and participating in this debate. I have lived in Berkeley Heights and have been an active volunteer in the community for over 13 years. I am a licensed engineer with over 22 years' experience. My strength in budgeting, capital planning, and facilities and commercial management are exactly what is needed to ensure these various projects are completed as agreed to by the developers. There is currently no one on the council now or on this stage tonight with these same skills. We need leadership that can make tough decisions and yet still have an eye for the future, skills I will continue to bring to the council. Michelle, Bob, and I feel there will be a clear choice this election. We will continue to have an open dialogue with residents during council meetings and encourage diverse points of view. Continue to build relationships with local businesses and landlords. Embrace what has worked for the town, look for efficiencies, and build for the future. As a voter, you have an opportunity to vote for 3 people who represent your values and have the necessary skills to build our future. On Election Day, Tuesday, November 6th, please vote Column B, Woodruff, DeQuilla, and Greco. Thank you very much again for coming out tonight.
Thank you. And Ms. Greco.
So I want to say thank you to the League for sponsoring this debate and to all of you here in the audience for attending. And I also want to thank my husband and my family for putting up with me with all the time that I've been spending on this. Events like this are very important. They're an important part of our democratic process, and I'm happy to have an opportunity to be here and talk to you and answer and address your questions and concerns. I pride myself on being a hard worker and a problem solver. The success of the council will be based on the skills and talents of the people in these seats. I've spent the last 10 years focused on finding efficient solutions to meet the strategic needs of large organizations such as Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, ensuring that they're in compliance with the latest federal regulatory requirements. I approach each project with a collaborative mindset. I put together teams with the right skills. I listen to all priorities and work with all stakeholders to achieve their objectives. I've been called a team player and a collaborative leader because I'm skilled at my job. Over the past 4 months, I've been fortunate to serve on the town council, and even in that short time, I see the hard work and talent that's required. We've made some difficult decisions, and I've seen how this team faces those challenges. There's a lot at stake for Berkeley Heights right now. The heavy lifting is behind us, but the execution of these major projects is critical. This is a team of intelligent, skilled, and ethical individuals who work hard for this town because we care about the future of Berkeley Heights. We are residents and taxpayers too. We have no hidden agenda, no political aspirations beyond serving the residents of Berkeley Heights. I'm proud to be a member of this team, and I'm asking you to vote column B on November 6th to support Woodruff, DeQuilla, and Greco, so we can keep the momentum going.
Before my closing remarks, let's thank the candidates. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for complying with our format and for allowing the candidates the maximum time to learn about them. You will vote on November 6th to choose 1 candidate for mayor and 2 candidates for township committee. In addition, you will weigh in on your choice for federal senator, 7th congressional district representatives, 3 freeholders for a 3-year term, and 1 for an unexpired term, members of the Board of Education, as well as a ballot question on state bonding, and information on that is available not only at the League website, but also in the back of the room. The deadline for voter registration has passed, but you can check to see if you are registered at the site elections.nj.gov. The deadline for requesting a vote by mail ballot is October 30th, or in person at the county clerk's office by 3 p.m. on November 5th. Polls are open on November 6th from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Encourage your friends, your neighbors, your family, your acquaintances, whomever you can drag in off the street, to make sure that they cast a vote. Information on the candidates is available at the website vote411.org, and there's information about that in the back as well. There is a Berkeley Heights Library survey at the back table. The library needs 500 people to complete this survey, so please take a form or go online to complete one tonight. Thank you to Mr. Voorhees and the GLTV production studios for taping the program and making it available to the public. You will be able to see it on GLTV 34 and FiOS 47. Our democracy depends on educated participation in the process. If you are interested in joining the League, information is also available not only in the back of the room, but also at lwvnj.org. Thank you so much. Drive home safely.